Hey guys, today I'm going to be showing you how to make the slave behavior where if a unit is beaten down to 1 health instead of being killed, they will change to the ownership of the player that killed them. As you can see here, I've made it so that when they go down to 1 health, they get dazed, and then after about 10 seconds, they'll quickly begin regenerating health, and once they get to half health, they'll no longer be dazed and they'll stop regenerating health.
For the reckoning.
They also, their pathing little radius gets down to 0 so that you can walk through the dazed units so they're not blocking you. You see these just kind of take these guys over. Now, before we get into the tutorial, be sure to check out Rencia on Steam. There's a free demo you can download, or you can even try the demo in your browser on simmer.io or newgrounds.com. So we will be beginning in the data editor. You can click here to get there or hit F7 as it shows you right there. We'll be starting in the behaviors, and if you don't see that as one of your tabs, you can click the little green plus over here, go to edit game data, click on behaviors, and it'll pop right up. Now if you're wondering why I don't see a bunch of listed values here, that's because I changed my data source to just this new stuff I'm adding to the map. That way it's less cluttered on my screen, kind of easier to navigate stuff as I do this tutorial. I've got my little guide here. We'll be starting with the big slave behavior that controls it all, and this will be the behavior that you add to the units that you want to be able to be captured when their health goes down to 0. So we'll right click, hit add behavior, call it slave behavior. Hit suggest, change the behavior type to buff, and we'll hit OK. First off, we'll want to go to the different damage response fields. We want to change the chance to 1, so it'll always happen when it gets hit. But we also want to change the fatal to true so that it only happens when it gets hit and its health would go to 0. Hit enabled. Then there's also one called modify fraction. That's right here. Change that from 1 to 0 so it'll essentially make the damage not hurt it at all, but will still have an effect that triggers. And you'll find out that with overkill, then the unit will end up having more health than just 1. So if the unit has 10 health remaining, you hit it with 15, then it'll essentially do 0 damage, but it'll still trigger the effect. Later, we're going to make an effect so that the unit's health will go down to 1 as well. So let's see, we got chance, fatal, modify fraction, we did that, and then I just want to show you handled is the one where we'll be adding the effect later, but we have not created that yet. So that'll be the effect that triggers when the fatal damage is dealt. Now we'll add another behavior called slave dazed. This will be responsible for all the stuff that happens while the unit is dazed. So it won't be able to move. It'll have a little fuzzy indicator over it. It'll be stunned, stuff like that. So let's add the behavior. Call it slave dazed or stunned or something along those lines. Change it to buff. Hit OK. See, we'll start with the radius multiplier. And this will allow units to run past those dazed units so they don't get hung up on each other. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I like to do it so you don't have a bunch of zerglings getting blocked by dazed units. So they can just run right past and get to the remaining units. Then alignment is something you don't have to do either, but this will basically make the buff icon a certain color. We're going to change it to negative, so that means it's red because being dazed is bad. Also, if you want to change the icon to something else, you can hit browse and sift through stuff. I'm not going to bother with that in this tutorial. but feel free to find something pretty. See the state flags. Big list of flags here you can do. The one we want is stunned. Stunned is a good effect compared to some others because if you issue orders to a stunned unit, it'll carry out those orders once it's done being stunned. So that's why I like stunned as compared to some other similar type states. Now we're going to be adding a validator. So as long as a validator is true, well, let me first show you this. We have two types of fields for the validators. We have a disabled and a remove. So if it returns false, the validator will be disabled. In this case, we want to remove it. So as long as the caster's life is less than 50%, this behavior of the slave being dazed will still be there. But once its health gets above 50%, then slave dazed will automatically get removed. Hit plus, caster life less than less than 50%. You don't want 50 because that's actual 50 health. We want percent. Hit OK. OK. I believe that is everything we want for the dazed. Yep. Gonna add a little bit more later, but that's all we want for dazed for now. We're gonna add the slave healing over time behavior. So this will be what heals it faster, and then we're also gonna have a slave hot healing over time cooldown, which will disable the slave healing over time while it's on the unit as well. So that way it won't immediately start healing over time. So we'll add the behavior, slave hot, suggest, buff, okay. Then we'll change the flags so that we're not having a bunch of buffs all crowding up the command card. We'll hide it, and feel free to hide any of these other behaviors if you don't want the crowding up the command card, as I said before. This will be what heals, so we'll change the vital regen bonus scaled. Change it to 5. Alright, and then we're going to have a validator that will make it so if the unit does not have this dazed behavior, then the healing over time will also be removed. And that way we don't only have to ever worry about removing the dazed, in which case the dazed is removed when the health gets above 50%. We could add the same validator to healing over time, but I wanted to make it so it's just connected to the dazed. So if the dazed isn't there, then neither is the healing over time. So we're going to go to the validators tab. Well, if you don't see it, hit the little plus, edit game data, click on validators. We're going to add validator. We're going to call it unit, or call it slave is dazed. It is a unit behavior. I want to say behavior count, but maybe it is behavior state. Or a unit, is it? Yeah, there it is. Unit compare behavior count. That's the one we want. So first we want to choose the behavior that it's counting, which is the dazed. And then we want to change the value here to 1. So as long as there is 1, because it should, yeah, it says equal to the compare here. You can also change it to one of these other values. In this case, we want equal to. If it's equal to 1, then it's true. So the healing over time will stay. So we'll go back to the behavior, add that validator that we just created. Again, we want it in the remove as opposed to the disabled. All right, just one more behavior to add. Call it slave hot cooldown. Again, buff. Go ahead, change it again in the, or hide it again in the flags. That's not crowding up the command card. So behaviors disabled. That is right here. Modification behaviors disabled. Again, disabled as opposed to removed. We don't want it to remove it, just to disable the cooldown. So it won't be able to heal. It won't be able to heal while the cooldown is active. We'll give it a duration of 10 seconds. Feel free to adjust that. And also feel free to adjust the amount of healing that this behavior does to whatever suits your needs. So that's all for the behaviors for now. We will be coming back to it in a little bit. Now we'll jump to effects. And again, if you don't see effects, you can come to the plus, go to edit game data, effects. All right, we'll start with all these apply behaviors. We're going to want one for the daze, for the heal, and for the heal cooldown. Add effect. Call slave apply daze. Apply behavior. The behavior we want it to apply is that slave dazed. And what's it called? Unit value. Right here, we want it to go to the source, which is the source of the behavior. It can be a little confusing. So it's the unit with that slave behavior that gets dazed as opposed to the unit that attacked it. The unit that attacked it is the target, because again, it's a little confusing, but the damage response from that behavior is targeting the unit that attacked it. A little confusing, but yeah, it takes a while to wrap your head around. So we'll go ahead and copy paste this, Control C, Control V. Change the name to apply healing over hot, healing over time. Change the behavior to the slave hot. Then copy paste that. Call it cooldown. And change the behavior to the cooldown. All right, that's 3 effects pretty fast, but they're pretty much the same, just different behaviors. Next, we'll do the effect that changes the owner of the unit. So we're going to add effect. Call it slave change owner. It is a modify unit effect. Hit OK. A couple different things we'll be doing here. First, we'll go to the modification flags. So a couple things you can click. We want owner to be clicked, so that'll actually change the owner. Then next, we want to modify owner. We want it to tell by owner player value. So as it says, this is the unit, the player that it gets changed to. So again, the target of the behavior is the unit that killed it. And it gets confusing. So the source player, wait, right? Yeah, that's what I wrote. No, target, right? Yeah. Yeah, we want the target for that one, not the source, because it's the behavior is targeting the unit that killed him. So the owner, the new owning player, is the target. Then the impact unit, the one that gets its ownership changed, is the source. And I'll stop talking because I'm pretty sure I said that correctly and I don't want to further confuse. All right. So that should be everything for that. Flag, player value, yeah, so those 3 things. 3 or 4. Next, we'll be doing the health change. So to get this to work correctly, if we were to just subtract the health, we could just end up killing the unit. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it first to 100% health, and then we're going to change it to minus 99% health. So we're adding 100% of its health, then we're subtracting 99% of its health. So that way we don't accidentally kill the unit in this process. So add effect, say slave unit full heal. Going to be a modify unit. Okay. Then we're going to be changing the vital fraction. Change fraction. So 1, that's the full heal. Then we also need to make sure we have the correct impact. Yeah, it's called the impact unit. Times you get all these different impact target, this and that. It can get confusing. We want it to be the caster, again, is the one that has the behavior. It is casting this effect. So that's the one that gets its health changed. Copy, paste this effect we just made. We'll call it full hurt or whatever. Again, still a modify unit, okay, and instead of a 1, it'll be a minus 99. Well, minus 0.99, rather. Alright, so that is all the main effects. Then we're going to do the set effect. If you don't know, a set effect is just a grouping of other effects. So we're going to throw all these effects that we just made into this set effect. Add effect, slave, initial set, which there will only be 1 set, but I like to get into the naming it kind of like that in case in the future I have multiple sets in some kind of path. Set effect, okay. And here it is, effect effects. Now, order in here does matter, but at first I'm just going to throw them all in there, and then we can discuss the order that they need to be in. Apply days. See, change owner. Full heal. All right. So the owner and the healing and hurt ones, they'll be towards the top. We want the heal to be before the hurt because, again, we don't want to accidentally kill the unit by hurting it first. The owner, that can either be at top or it could be under the hurt. Either way, we do want the heal and the hurt to be above the days, because if we remember, we added that validator on the days that if the unit has greater than 50% health, then this disappears. So when it heals, that would make the days disappear. So we're going to make the days come after we do the heal. And then similarly, with the healing over time, it automatically removes itself if the days isn't present. So the days needs to come before the healing over time. And we want the cooldown to start from the beginning. And we're actually going to apply it again in some other areas, as we'll see in a second, because anytime it gets attacked while being dazed, we want the cooldown to restart. Alright, so that is it for the effects. We got to come back to the behaviors. Now, again, slave behavior, the big master effect, the one that you add to the unit. Here's the handled, as I mentioned before. We are going to add that set effect that puts all those things into motion. Slave initial set. All right, everything looks good there. Again, it only occurs if it would have been fatal damage. That changes the damage to 0. Then it does this effect. Now one thing to note is that this effect creates that cooldown, but there is a possibility that the unit could be healing and then it gets attacked without fatal damage, and in that case I still want the cooldown to reset, because I want it to be only healing when it hasn't been recently attacked. So I'm going to come to slave dazed and similarly going to change that damage response chance to 1, and for the handled, rather than that whole set effect, I'm just going to be adding the slave hot cooldown one, because that's all I need there. So it'll reset the cooldown when it gets attacked and dazed. One last thing we can do is we can go over to our actors to add a little effect, that little dazed effect that occurs. And if you don't have actors, the plus, I believe it's under actor data. Yeah, that makes it easy. I thought it was going to be under art and sound, but it's got its own little category. Actors, and I am just going to piggyback off of an actor. I believe it's called Mind Blast. Mind Blast Stun, something like that. Yeah, Mind Blast Stun. You could make a new one, you could copy and paste it, but I'm just going to go into the events and I'm going to copy and paste this, and I'm going to change the behavior to that stun effect we just made. So the slave dazed, when it goes on, it'll create the dazed effect above its head. And I'm going to copy and paste the off. When the dazed effect is gone, then this will be removed. It'll play that burst, stand, destroy, and that burst, stand, destroy ends. Let's see. Yeah, just stop, and it gets rid of it. So, okay. And that's all there is to it. It's all finished, good to go. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Let me know if you want to see more. Definitely be sure to support me on, you can buy a copy of Rencia. Like making stuff. And at a future date, I might also do a Patreon where you can support tutorials and other videos. So be on the lookout for that. And thank you for watching. Bye now.